from my room.
Okay, okay.
So that conversation
Yeah, right.
doesn't
So
get.
the conversation is not disturbed. Okay.
Yes, yes. So let's
Hey
connect from there.
everyone.
And then when I leave.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome you all to India HR Live, where change agents transform the world of HR. And today we are doing a special show with Mahindra and Mahindra Leadership Team. And we have our guests joined with us from Mahindra and Mahindra, who is, first of all, let me introduce and kick off the show by introducing Prince August.
Okay.
Um, hey everyone, can you? Hey, I'm getting a lot of disturbance over here. I guess, Namrata, I would appreciate you to close that live window that you have opened over there. All right, that sounds good. Hey Prince, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here over at India HR Live. I know it's a busy schedule over India after the Navaratri celebrations. This is the time you get back to work and get back to your real schedule. So first of all, we appreciate your presence over here. So if you can talk a little bit about what you do at your organization, that would be really great.
Okay. I'm sure most of you would know about the Mahindra Group. We are a 16.7 billion US dollar group in multiple lines of businesses: auto, farm, IT, hospitality, construction, life spaces, financial services, and several other things. So we say that we are a microcosm of India. We operate out of 18 industries. We operate out of 18 industries, and we employ over 180,000 people globally. My role is at a group level, at a Mahindra group level. I look after group human capital and leadership development. Uh, I have with me today my colleagues Namrata Gill. She is the Vice President, Organizational Development, Training, and Change Management for the auto and farm business. Uh, I also have with me my colleague Dr. Nand Kumar, who is responsible for group leadership development and the Dean of our Mahindra Leadership University. I do not know if my colleague Naushad Nurani has joined in. He is responsible for OD and change management across the group.
All right.
So we are here to share with you our experiences of what learning organization is all about. And all my colleagues are highly experienced, very knowledgeable, much more than me. And collectively, we'll share with you what we have done to make Mahindra Group learning, agile, and quite connected with people across generations.
Well, all right, that's great to know more about. We can't wait to know more about the great work that you do at Mahindra and Mahindra. So let's check with other panelists as well. And hi, Namrata, please say hi to our audience. You're on mute, Namrata. Can you unmute yourself? All right.
Hi. Hi. Can you hear me, Nisha?
I can hear you, but you have opened that live window, I guess. Can you close that live YouTube channel? That's where the echo is coming. Know more about, we can't wait to know more about the great work that you do with Mahindra. So let's other panelists as well. And hi, Namrata, please say hi to our audience.
Hi, everybody. Delighted to be here. Hi,
You're on
Prince.
mute, Namrata.
I'm not on mute.
Can you unmute?
I'm not on mute. Hi. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Nisha?
I can hear you. I can hear you. There is a window that is open, maybe a YouTube channel or India HR Live website where you close it out. No problem. Please be on mute, Namrata, while I introduce Nanda Kumar and Naushad to our audience. Hi, Naushad. Welcome to India HR Live.
I'm not able to see that.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Nisha.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to India HR Live. And we have Mr. Nandakumar. Hi, Mr. Nandakumar. Welcome
Hi,
to
hi. How are you?
HR.
How are you, Nisha? How are you, Nisha?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Well, thank you for asking that. Well, I guess we have some kind of a technical trouble at this moment, and I lost Prince Augustine and Miss Namrata at this point. So, Mr. Nandakumar, we would really appreciate if you can kick off some of the great work that you do at Mahindra and Mahindra from an L&D perspective. What are some of the initiatives that you are doing at this moment? And then we'll move on with the topic.
Yeah, I think as a part of the leadership development programs at Mahindra, we have an integrated development approach that we do. And these programs are based on the development needs which are identified through the development centers or the 360-degree or the business imperatives, and based on the Mahindra leadership competency. And some of the programs that we do, we would like to share with the group would be the one program that we do with the Law School of Business on the Global Program for Management Development. We collaborate with the Center for Creative Leadership and roll out the Leadership Pipeline programs. And in addition to that, we do a number of other initiatives which are done at the sectorial level.
All right, that's great. So, how do you think, this is a function that helps the organization meet the business needs, right? So how should L&D leaders prepare for those future challenges and probably finding out those future challenges and then prepare ahead of time?
So,
Namrata, are you back?
yes, I am.
This
So
is
I
much more clear. That's great.
Yeah.
So Namrata, she is currently at United States right now. She is traveling and in the middle of a campus interview, and we are so lucky to have her chime in on our show and share her thoughts and insights. So welcome back, Namrata.
Thank you so much. So, I was thinking the biggest challenge for L&D today is to make sure all learning and development efforts actually translate into organizational capability. And you need to have some kind of a magic wand to arrive at organization capability. I know it's easier said than done. You have to align with the business, you have to understand the business needs, translate them backward. But I think the key challenge is at what level of aggregation do you take them? For example, I've seen a lot of my colleagues doing a role-based competency mapping, which takes it at a very micro level of aggregation, which becomes very tedious and very difficult to build. So if you need to intensify L&D efforts and if you need to really make them work, you have to aggregate them at the business process level. Let's say you understand a sales process end to end. And once you understand the sales process end to end, then you need to pick up critical chains in the process and build capability at that levels. The moment you start doing it at a role-based level, you lose out, translating into an organization capability. And to me, that is the biggest challenge that we have today.
So that's one thing that organization or probably the leaders in the organizations are doing wrong, because they are focusing L&D into a role-based model rather than a holistic model, right?
Yeah. And I think when we take it at a very micro level, it becomes difficult to build competencies at the micro level. The effort needed is many-fold more.
That's great. So what's the role of other leaders, especially L&D leaders are there to help out the other functional leaders, as you said, the sales function or customer care function, or the if it is a network function or marketing function. So how should they coordinate with other business leaders in finding out those business needs and then plan for it?
I think the business need, and that is my thought process. I know a lot of people disagree with it. The business needs to translate into an organization process before it translates into an organization capability. And most of us miss out that step. If we take directly from a business need and it doesn't translate to an organization business value chain process, it only translates into organization capability, then you miss out that step and you have to be very careful to incorporate that step. So that
Right.
is.
So that's Namrata. She talked a little bit about the challenges of L&D leaders. So Naushad, can you hear me?
Yes, Nisha, I can.
Great, great. Well, welcome back again. Thank you so much for joining with us. So, do you agree with Ms. Namrata, whatever she has shared, based on the challenges that L&D leaders are facing at this moment? And what do you think L&D leaders how do you think L&D leaders should prepare for those future challenges?
So what Namrata has highlighted is extremely true. What is required of learning and development professionals is to understand the business completely and be able to help the organization build the capabilities that are required to be able to compete effectively in the market. What is also important is not only to think of the current development needs, but going forward, what are the capabilities that will be required by the organization, say 3 years down the line or 5 years down the line, because time flies very fast. And you're building
Exactly.
capability not only to ensure that the team is effective for today, but how will the capabilities build on and help us gear ourselves for the future. And you're not talking very long term, but at least 3 years or 5 years down the line, we should be able to compete effectively in the market and do much better. Having said that, what Namrata also added was extremely important. While we may do a lot of development activities, and development activities are not only limited to workshops, we're also referring to a lot of executive coaching, a lot of internal mentoring, a lot of good job rotations and meaning stretchful assignments, because development is holistic. In addition to education, you have to ensure a lot of experiences and a lot of exposure as well. But how do all these efforts translate into building of capability, which translates into effective performance on the job? How to bring about that behavioral change on the job? And that is the challenge. How do we align that and make sure that all our efforts are truly effective in building the capabilities?
All
So
right.
all these are the challenges, and I think Namrata has captured these extremely well. Prince, would you like to add something since you're back on our video line?
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
thanks. What happens is that there is a lot of noise in an organization that takes place, and people get lost in the noise, and thoughts get lost in the noise. So how do you ensure that people are relevant to times of today? Like I often refer to this, Andy Grove said, as organizations grow, you lose the soul of an organization. And therefore, how do you retain the soul of a small company as organizations grow larger? Right? This is the biggest challenge, because that is when you're small, everybody is connected to each other. Everybody knows what is happening, and everybody knows what is relevant for today and what is relevant for tomorrow. Right? But as organization grows in size, keep being in relevance is the biggest challenge, because skills get outdated very fast, business
Exactly.
models get outdated very fast. So how do you ensure that in this VUCA world you are relevant, you are able to really keep in pace with the change, and you are able to get every soul connected with rest of the organization for now and in the future?
So, what are some of the data that you use? Because we are now, right now, we can hear that from Namrata and from Mr. Naushad and from you, as you said, the skills get outdated and the challenges get, always the new challenges that we are facing at an organization. But as an HR perspective, we normally talk about, hey, we need to think ahead of time, probably use data and analytics to make informed decisions so that you will be prepared for the future. So what are some data aspects that you use currently when it comes to probably predicting the future needs of your organization? And not to get into a reactive mode, but then, prepare for the future demands of the organization.
Yeah, so see, what you would look at is you would look at some of the technology shifts which are taking place. Right? That is the one aspect that you would look at. Second is you would look in terms of what is the data which is showing how business models will shift, how consumer preferences will shift, how buyer behavior will shift, how markets will evolve, right? Now, all these things have got a people impact. If you find that the globe is converging, what has happened, right? When we had that when globalization was really not in place, we found that most of the markets were decoupled. But with globalization, we found that markets got coupled. So when markets get coupled, we'll find that competition is really at its peak, and therefore business models can get outdated. So we found that if you look at the computers got totally outdated very soon, and then now we have got iPads, and now you have got miniature systems which have really come in at the workplace. If you look at workplace automation that is taking place, and therefore we also look in terms of how generations are evolving. People are looking at what are the future of workplaces tomorrow, right? And therefore it is not a single point of data that you would be looking at. You would be looking at multiple points of data from different sources and integrate it into an organizational ecosystem. Probably we can hear Nandkumar, if you would like to add anything on this.
Yeah, please.
Because
Hi.
that is a big learning challenge, because when he designs learning modules, how does he really keep track of these tectonic shifts?
I think one of the ways that we keep doing is following what we call as the two approaches. One approach is what we call is outside in approach and inside out approach. It gives you in terms of looking at in terms of what are the things which are happening outside the organization, which Prince was eloquently talking about it, and therefore the impact that it creates at the learning level as well as on the organization as a whole. And also one looks at from inside outside approach in terms of looking at what are the things that we are integrating and learning and transferring to people. Are they really making a difference to the actual business and the results that they are able to achieve? So the transformation that is able to do, and constant processes of following these two processes of inside outside approach or outside inside approach would help us in aligning our training and development initiatives to serve the purpose for which we are wanting to actually develop and do them.
All right. So, Mr. Nandakumar, he mentioned about inside-outside approach. So, Namrata currently, she is in United States. She's helping the organization meet that untapped talent in different parts of the world. And in the beginning, Mr. Prince suggested about the challenges, that is one of generational differences and global differences. And the organization is growing globally. So, Namrata, what is your role as an L&D expert when it comes to building a robust learning organization? Because currently, you can see that your employees are spread across the world, so you need to figure out a way to educate them when it comes to giving training or giving any other support, but using technology as a part of virtual learning that is also there. So a lot of learning challenges are there when you work globally, right? So what is your role when it comes to building a robust learning organization?
So we, Prince, Nandkumar, Naushad, and I work as a team, and we go there and work it out. I think three things that we've worked this year onwards. First is that there's much more to learning than training, and technology is only one part. I think customizing the interventions to suit the way people learn is extremely important. So that is one shift that we have taken place. The second shift is, I think, differentiating in terms of learning opportunities that you give to everybody. For example, the talent should give something which we call as TTD, targeted talent development. Talent development has to be the learning for talent or your high potential candidates has to be significantly different from the opportunities that you give others. So that is the second part. The third part is whatever you do has to work across cultures and has to be very global in nature which should cover all diversities, whether it's generational, whether it's ethnic, whether it's any diversity, it should cover the whole spectrum of population. And the fourth and most important is not to do something that is fashionable, but actually what your organization needs, right? You can't, let's say, go for e-learning or social learning just because it's a fad, but actually what the organization needs. I like
Exactly.
to highlight something that perhaps Nanda Kumar have worked a lot on. This is something called reflective conversation. And this was a huge opportunity that we got, that how to make sure that we are not an organization that just flies all the time, actually sits down and reflects and comes back with a better learning and better leadership. I think that was the most significant part of my learning as a L&D professional. How to do, and we designed a program. Prince worked on the program, uh, which actually worked across geographies and across globes and across our businesses, whether with it IT or auto or manufacturing, for making sure that the organization need of being a reflective organization is developed through L&D.
Well, in fact, there is a question that has come up on our Twitter stream at this point, and that's from Pooja. She is asking, how do you bring behavioral changes on the job? And while we were talking about building capabilities for the future, right? Um, as an HR perspective, but from a leadership perspective, we normally focus on this cultural fit and those behavior that we really wanting to continue or see in our organization. So when it comes to bring a behavioral change, do you think is it possible?
So, Prince, would you like to take on this?
Yeah. See, what they say is sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a DNA. Therefore, we exactly should know what you want to change. So, behavior is the way people think, culture is the way people think, act, and behave in an organization. Therefore, first we need to know, why do you want to change behavior? We don't change behavior because we want to change behavior. We want to change behavior because we want to bring some strategic cultural shift in an organization. For example, if you are a late entrant to the market and you have always been last when it came to delivering new products in the market, you want to bring some level of proactivity in the organization. Therefore, now that is the behavior that you want to shift, right? Now, therefore, you would look at signs where you are seen to be reactive. So you will take those things and bring a massive change management initiative in place. And therefore, you have got to work with the HR levers, because people in an organization do not understand anything because they experience the organization through the HR levers. And therefore, if I have got to bring proactivity as a behavioral shift in the organization, then I've got to tweak my HR systems, which will help me to bring proactivity. Like, for example, I've got to look at my performance management system, which looks in terms of making goals which shape behavior of people towards being proactive. I would make goals to make a difference in lives of others, because that is what proactivity is all being about. Third aspect of proactivity is making people make choices, which means that the performance management system in the organization will be tweaked to ensure that you make people make the right choices. And if you make people take the right choices, you make people proactive in the sense they do not react to situations, and they make a difference in the lives of people, and they act on their circle of influence. You would have created an organization which is proactive, and therefore you would have worked on this behavior of being proactive. Does this clarify?
Yes, indeed. Well, one of your points, as you said right now, is to help people make the right choices, right? So when it comes to a career development, that's where an employee is gonna, engage more when it comes to a workplace. Not like maybe his salary or nothing like that, but still, career development is the first and foremost priority for any other employee if you take. But what's the role of those managers, of those first line managers, when it comes to helping that employee make the right choices so that he can pursue a career that he is more inclined to?
So I think
It's a brilliant question. In fact, Namrata has worked a lot in this area, and since she'll be leaving shortly, let's hear Namrata on this.
yeah, so I think there are two parts to it. First is any development discussion should not happen irrespective of careers, because development discussion should be based on your current role, but also on the future role that you require wherever your career is taking. Prince and I had worked on an online career management tool, which is actually which simulates different career paths in the organization. And once you simulate that, it tells you the difference between where you are today, where you want to go, and what are the learning needs that the gap in terms of knowledge, skill, and abilities that you will have, as well as experience, and how do you need to bridge that gap. So it was a simulator tool. So also when we did a study, and I'm just corroborating what you're saying, when Prince had done a study around 4 years back, why do employees leave you? Why do employees stay engaged with you? And why do employees join you? In terms of all the three circles, the concentration was one, career development. So we got career, all your learning and development, individual efforts cannot be linked with career. The moment you delink them, it becomes a very theoretical exercise and it doesn't make any sense. So your IDPs have to talk to your careers, your personal development plans have to talk to your career. And I'm sure Nanda would like to add here more.
Yeah, please go ahead, Nanda.
Yeah, I think.
Would you like to...
Yes, Mr. Nanda, please go ahead.
Yeah,
no, I think in continuation of what Namrata said, I think the great opportunity for people to involve in a career progression discussion also happens as a result of our integrated approach to the development, where people go through the development centers, which also highlights which are some of the career aspiration points of the individual and how are the competencies enabling them and supporting them. While the learning and development will partner with the businesses in identifying the right type of courses, you will appreciate much of the learning for career progression comes from the actual job rotations and the exposure that people do online. And therefore, in a systematic way, the individual development action plans that we develop in our organization enable the career succession and career planning for the individual by discussing with the first line managers or the reporting managers and the HR. So there is a triad which works in enabling the career progression of an individual, a meaningful exercise for him as well as for the organization, Nisha.
Right. Well, I guess Namrata, she is currently, as I said, in the middle of campus interviews, and we are lucky to have her for the first half an hour for the show. So thanks, Namrata.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Prince. Thank you, Nanda.
Okay, Namrata, have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Namrata.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, so let's move on with our next question, and that is, how would L&D leaders align learning with business needs? Well, when we talk about HR learning business, that's always a challenge for us in the very beginning, right? So how do you think, what are some of the skills that HR is missing at this point, or L&D is missing at this point when it comes to identifying or learning the business? Mr. Naushad, would you be able to take this question?
Sure. So there are a couple of things that need to be done. How much time do we spend actually in the market or at the coal face? It is required in many organizations that at least one day in a quarter you spend in the field. You actually go out with your sales force, spend a day meeting channel partners, dealers, going actually and finding out what the customer wants, how do the transactions actually take place, and what are the challenges faced by the business at that point in time. What is it that the competition has to offer? What is it that we are offering? And unless we are able to get that pulse of the market along with the sales force, or actually spend time in the manufacturing plant and understand what the operations really are, that is where the gap comes in terms of developing business acumen of the business that we belong to.
Exactly, and it does differ. When it comes to different industries, it's actually different. How a retail industry works, it would be entirely different than how a manufacturing industry works. So, Mr. Prince, would you like to add any thoughts on?
Nisha, can I add something
Yeah,
over here? What we
Yeah,
are looking
sure.
at
yeah,
is,
yeah.
Nisha, the entire value chain, right from the supply chain onwards to manufacturing, again
Mm-hmm.
back to logistics, then back into the sales, into the field. So the
So
entire
it's looking
value chain,
holistically.
yeah, that becomes extremely important.
Exactly.
Yeah, Prince, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, yeah. So you know what? If you look at the, I think the sixth habit of Stephen Covey, seek first to understand and then be understood, right? So this is what L&D professionals speak of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you have got to do is that you've got to understand the language of business, right? The language of business is more in terms of strategy, which means in terms of customers, markets, products, processes, yeah. Then
Competition.
next is in terms of the language of the balance sheet. Do you understand the complete balance sheet in terms of what drives financial performance? Then in terms of the language of the customer, what are the customer needs? What is it that would delight a customer? And how do you really ensure that your products and processes are current, right? And then you would look at the language of technology, right? Then after looking at the language of business, you have got the language of development, right? So HR people, L&D professionals should understand what is the language of development which you need to really connect with business. In the sense that if the business says that I want to improve my return on capital employed, then I must know what does return on capital employed means, and therefore what is the language of development. Language of development is in terms of goals. What sort of goals do I give for people to ensure that I improve my return on capital employed? If I want to improve return on capital employed, I must look upon improving sales and reducing costs, improving profits. So therefore, what are the goals that I do to increase my top line? What are the goals that I take to increase my profits? What are the goals that I take to reduce my overheads, right? So if I'm able to take all these things, then I will be able to have a better capital turnover ratio, and therefore I would have a better return on capital employed. Now, this is the language of development which he uses. Next language of development is that if I want people to understand what business capability is all about, then I must understand what sort of development needs I get out of people so that they are able to help me understand what business is all about. Which means if I'm in a capital intensive business, I need to train people on understanding what these capital equipments are all about and how can I get better productivity out of this thing. Similarly, when it comes to engagement, I must be able to connect my language of engagement with the language of business. So if L&D people have to be relevant, they have got to create the language of business with the language of development. And that is the biggest challenge for them, because one is a creative aspect and one is a rational aspect. The rational and creativity, how do you really bring the whole thing in place? So can L&D professionals do it? If they can do it, then they would become what are known as business learning professionals.
So, what are some of the challenges that you face when it comes to the business leaders are not able to understand the language of development, and how do you kind of educate them?
So what happens is you have got to spend a lot of time in terms of listening to them. You have got to spend a lot of time having powerful conversations with them. You got to spend a lot of time asking them the right questions so that they are able to reflect, and you are able to consider them as a stakeholder. If you consider them as a stakeholder, understand what are their pain points and try to find a solution to their pain points, then they will relate to you. Otherwise, why should they relate to you?
Right. So the next question on our schedule, let me pull that up. Okay. What would be the framework of leadership program in changing demographies? So is there a difference that you can highlight how you work in India and probably how you work in the United States or any part
Naushad,
of the
would you like?
world? Yeah, Mr. Naushad.
Right. So, what we need to take into consideration, of course, is the cultural differences as well as the differences in business models across geographies. So those are the two aspects that we need to take into consideration while addressing learning and development needs.
All right, that's right. So we are almost
Mitra, in
halfway through.
addition,
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Nandikumar.
I believe we also need to keep in mind the penetration of the technology and the use of that. We needed to keep in mind as you design and deliver programs across the various geographies. While the changing demographics in the Indian organizations do give all sorts of multi-generational workforce work, your leadership development programs need to cater to the different levels and the comfort with which are available at the different multi-regional generation workforce that work in the organization.
So technology comes a great part when it comes to doing what you do best, right? So,
Yes.
so how do you actually stay current on what are the latest, what are the latest and current in from a technological point of view, and how do you train your trainers? I mean, you're the people who generally train others within your organization, right? So, how do you stay current?
By practicing. Like we have never, the first time that I'm coming in a Google Hangout, so I've got to experiment. Right? So
well, thank you for being
unless
here.
you don't experiment, there is no way that you will be current with any change that is happening. Right? That is the first thing.
That's true.
Next is in terms of making people learn and unlearn. Because Alvin Toffler had said that illiterates of today are those who do not know how to read and write, but are those who do not know how to learn and unlearn. So any part of the world, right, it makes no difference. But if you do not know how to learn and unlearn, there is no way that you can learn new technology, new ways of working, and new processes. What happens in US is US is quite a liberal economy, right? And there is very little protectionism which is there. Therefore, the need for change is very high, and technological shifts, etc., probably happens much faster than in India over here, right? And the literacy and exposure that people have is much more. Therefore, amenability to change and use technology is much higher there than in India. Okay, in India, the literacy rates are not very high. The type of workforce profile is also probably not as advanced as in many parts of the world, right? So you have a change in terms of making them learn new technologies, etc. But they are very both the workforces are very adaptable. Probably Indian workforce is much more adaptable than any other part of the world. So as Naushad had said, it is cultural differences and basically learning styles. We need to understand how learning styles vary. In any part of the world, people will have 3 or 4 dominant learning styles. If we're able to understand the learning styles, then we'll be able to make them adapt or learn any type of technology.
Right. So let's move on with the questions on our Twitter stream.
May I add something over here?
Please do that.
One thing which is universal in terms of learning across geographies, when Pooja had asked this question about how do you go about bringing about a change in behaviors at the workplace, there are 4 things that are essential conditions that have to be met in order to be successful in doing so. One, of course, is the inner conviction of the individual as to why should I change my behavior? How does it help me? What's in it for me? What's in it for my team? So that is the first piece that we need to tackle, that the person internally is completely convinced that the change of behavior that you desire is going to benefit him or her in a very big way. Second thing, of course, is the capability building around that change in behavior that is required in terms of skill building, which is the second condition. The third important condition, which sometimes gets overlooked, is do I have sufficient role models around in the organization who show that desired behavior? And when that takes place, that socialization, then I'm able to connect better, that I see people at different levels displaying the desired behavior. And fourth, of course, is the having the processes and the structures in place, which Prince spoke about in terms of the HR levers. So there are these 4 essential conditions that need to be fulfilled. One is the inner conviction of the individual. Secondly, of course, the skill building. The third part of is the role model. Fourth part is the structures, the processes, the mechanisms that help me or reinforce these new behaviors. Having said that, one thing which is universal across all cultures and across all geographies, which a lot of people are speaking about, and that is true, one is the willingness of individuals to learn, my openness and inquisitiveness to learn new things, and the second part is the agility or the ability to learn fast. Which is very different from what will be
I have a
required tomorrow.
concept here.
So do we?
If you have seen a boxer, right? Have you seen any boxing?
You need to adapt very fast, right?
If a boxer does not have the agility to take a punch, right, there is no way he can stand. Similarly, there is a learning agility. That if your mind is not adaptable to fast responses, there is no way that you can learn. Right. So therefore, you look at the agility quotient of people.
Correct.
But
in fact, there is. Go ahead, Prince.
So Nisha,
no, I'm having some. We're not able to hear properly.
In terms of, are we ensuring that?
Yeah, your voice is breaking up. So we have a quote just related to what you have shared right now. That is from Sridharan, and he is saying, whatever the framework, make sure the learners are comfortable and happy on it. More advanced more advanced or less equipped won't fetch. So this happens with, currently we are managing 5 generations in our workforce, right? So some of them, let me say the baby boomers, who might not be fully comfortable using the social learning platform, or probably the new edition that is blend.
Who told you? We are using it now.
No, currently we are using because I introduced you guys, right? So, but then
if you say we are on Facebook, we may not be on Google Hangout, but we are there on Skype. We are there on LinkedIn. What is the
best thing is the best thing is you guys look at it in a positive way and really wanting to explore all the new technical advances out there, which is really huge. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm about to say. A mindset which is really wanting to explore what's new in the industry should always be there. And while we were talking about 5 generations in the workflows, how do you kind of make sure that the trainees are fully involved in what you present to them?
What do you mean by that?
In the sense, like, if we need to get the best out of the tool that we use, the trainees should be able to capture, and trainees should be able to know at least how to use it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. What if the trainees are not interested in the platform that you use? Or probably not you, but any other organizations that are using currently. If the trainees are not comfortable using that platform, how would you kind of tackle that issue?
See, what happens is, if you're looking at any platform, you must involve people and co-create with them what is a platform that you want to really work on, right? So what they say is that involve me, show me, teach me, and I will make it happen. But if you don't involve me, if you don't teach me, how can I really make it happen?
Exactly.
Right? So this is all a change management process, and as Naushad rightly put it, you follow the framework what he has explained, right? You will be able to make people adapt to any new technology or process.
Right. So let's move on to the questions that are on our Twitter stream. And we have the first question that is from Prashant. And he is asking, what percentage of internal resources used for L&D purpose?
Doc, would you like to answer? Nanda?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah,
Mr. Nandakumar, we are able to hear you, but we are not able to see you.
I'm not able to see you. I'm not able to see you guys.
That's okay, Mr. Nandakumar. We can hear you.
Okay. I think the internal, if I understand the question, it was what are the internal resources we use, right?
Correct. What percentage of internal resources used for L&T purpose? That was the question.
I think our target currently is to have more than 10% of the resources to become from the internal leaders. I think that percentage we would like to increase more. And I believe when you refer to internal resources, I mean not only in terms of the senior leaders, road modeling, and then coming and teaching in the 11 training programs, but it also includes in terms of the course materials and case studies that we prepare for ourselves in learning internalization becoming easier. I think that to a large extent we are able to do, because when we invent the knowledge partner to come and partner with us and then design the programs, a great degree of customization of the contents do take place, but the degree of involvement of internal resources as a faculty, we would like to increase the percentage from there where what is currently being. Prince, you may like to add?
All right.
Yeah,
So.
Nisha, what we also have are a lot of fireside chats. So periodically we have senior leaders on webinars on, if you have something like Google Hangout in our organization, we have the RISE portal, and then we are connected all across the locations. So every month there is a fireside chat with a senior leader, and youngsters are invited. I mean, people can post questions online, they can have conversations in person, and this helps disseminate information as well as get the ongoing conversation complete. In addition to that, if I was to take the instance of building a reflective organization, during the last, I would say 8 months or so, most of the workshops that have been conducted across the globe on building a reflective organization, or rather on reflective conversations, was spearheaded by internal faculty members themselves. So we had a lot of internal trainers contributing. The third example I would like to cite is we have 8 academies operating presently under the Mahindra Leadership University, and the members of all these academies are drawn internally. So we have several professionals from a variety of our businesses. We have a federal structure. So all our businesses have contributed to members of the academies under the Mahindra Leadership University. So the focus growingly and increasingly is on having reliance on internal capability builders rather than focusing or being over dependent on external faculty members. Does that help, Nisha?
Indeed. Well, that is a lot of information, and I know you guys are doing a great work out there, and thank you for sharing that with our audience. And the next question is from, his Twitter handle is Inspector Dola. He is asking, can leadership development help to change employee expectations regarding job profile?
Definitely, in the sense that, see, when I say job profile would mean different roles that exist in an organization, right? And your question is, can expectations be changed?
Correct.
Right? What is the question?
Can leadership development help to change employee expectations regarding job profile?
Yeah. So let's assume that a person is an individual contributor.
Okay.
He aspires to now become a team leader. Now, what does leadership development do? It helps in him to identify what is his current capability, what are the current gaps, and what is the future capability, and therefore what are the gaps which helps him to.
Yeah. So I guess we lost Mr. Prince in the middle of his talk. Mr. Naushad, would you like to take it over?
Yeah, so 2 things that need to be done. Earlier, Namrata and Dr. Nandkumar had referred to career conversations. So if our leadership development focuses also on getting to know your employees better, getting to know your team members better, getting to know their aspirations, and having career conversations with them in line with the development needs, as well as to find out what their career aspirations are, then it becomes meaningful to get into expectations of individuals about their roles and how they contribute to the larger picture, both for the organization as well as for the individual.
All right, that's great. So the next question is again from him. He is asking, leadership development is most critical process for organization's growth, but does management give HR freedom? So that is a question that is
Hello.
directly rooted for. Hi, Mr. Prince.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was
So
just, I'm sorry, it got disconnected.
no problem.
So therefore, what happens is, I told you that you are a team leader. Now you show the gap, and then you bring in developmental initiatives to help fill the gap, depending upon what his learning styles are, what sort of interventions are required. And when you're able to fill the gap, you'll find that you create in him a inner pull to take up the next role. He does that role, he's successful. Then he says, yes, I want to go to the next level, which is a manager. Right? So
Correct.
you create a mental map within him that if I learn, if I understand what the capabilities are, right, and if
Correct.
I put efforts to learn, then I will be able to grow higher up, right? So in this way, a process of vertical development starts taking place, right? And therefore, you will see that leadership development helps in creating aspiration for different profiles of jobs in the organization.
That's great. Thanks for adding that up with Mr. Nafshad's thought. And the next question is from Inspector Dula. He is asking, leadership development is most critical process for organizations' growth, but does management give HR freedom? So what are some challenges that HR has when it comes to doing what they do best?
Okay, the mind is in itself, like John Milton had said, the mind is in itself. It can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. What is freedom? Freedom is your state of mind,
Correct.
right? And if
Exactly.
you are not able to influence people in the organization to follow a path which is necessary for the success of the organization, then are you being a true professional? Right? So you've got, you see, if you are in a industry which is having cash crunch, and then you've got to, and then you say, no, I need to invest $1 million to really bring about a change, then you are being unrealistic, right? Therefore, you've got to adapt your interventions based on the needs of the business. Every investor, every person who runs the business is a stakeholder. So you understand the stakeholder and bring in interventions which are appropriate to the needs of the stakeholder, then he will empower you. Because nobody can empower anybody. You have to get yourself empowered, which means you must know the direction in which you are going. You must know the needs of the people. You must know how to align to those needs. Then you will empower yourself, and organization will empower you. And that is what freedom is all about.
Exactly. And the next question that is from go. Okay. Tweets Gayusri. Okay. She is asking, the performance appraisal process can help career progression and how that can be made different from L&D.
Naushad, would you like to respond?
I need to understand the question a little better.
Well, she's saying the performance appraisal process, well, indeed, will give a career progression. That's what she says, and how that can be made a different from L&D. So, how does L&D work in align with succession planning, very particularly, because these two factors are highly aligned when it comes to the career advancement of an employee, right? So it has to be linked with the performance management system and directly aligned with the goals of the organization when it comes to building the next leaders within the organization.
So, Nisha, you mentioned succession management, and
Mm-hmm.
succession planning usually does not limit itself to identifying of successors, but also identifying their state of readiness. And when we speak about state of readiness, what are the gaps that we need to fill in, or what are the capabilities that need to be developed? And that is where the L&D professionals come in terms of accelerating the development of those identified successors in the areas that have been identified. When it comes to performance management, when an immediate manager is having a performance dialogue with his or her team member, how does he or she get into those conversations which are revolving around the career of the individual. What has the immediate feedback of the last on what has transpired during the last 12 months? How does that build on to identifying development needs, not only for the present role, but for the next immediate role that will come up in line with the career aspirations? If you are able to capture those needs correctly and comprehensively in consultation with the concerned employee, then that is where the L&D professionals come into play in terms of making sure how do we develop those capabilities with a combination of education, experience, and exposure. So if a person is not going in for a job rotation, is there a stretch assignment or participation in a cross-functional team project that can be assigned to the individual to help him or her develop the capabilities that are required?
Right. And the next question is from Prashant. He is asking, how do we identify the internal gurus for learning? Well, we are all learners, so is there something called internal gurus? Well, I remember in my previous organization, we kind of do a community sort of program for employees, not just as a formalized learning process, but as a process that employees do an initiative of sharing their knowledge to other team members or probably other functional team members in the organization. But then, what's your perspective? How do you kind of identify the internal gurus of learning within the organization?
So we have identified subject matter experts.
Exactly.
Just to give an instance, when we have the academies formed under Mahindra Leadership, whether it's the manufacturing academy or the sales and marketing academy, or even the human resources academy. And we had the earlier question on how do we rely more and more on internal resources for ensuring learning and development. So each of these academies would identify subject matter experts or champions, irrespective of hierarchy, irrespective of levels, but who are not only passionate about the arena in which they are operating, but they are practitioners who have accomplished a lot and who are articulate and willing to share their knowledge. That becomes extremely important. Not only identifying them, but engaging them in a lot of conversations, inviting them to share their knowledge, and then ensuring that we appreciate and recognize the contribution that they make. And that becomes extremely important.
Indeed, indeed. So my next question would be, that has come to my mind while Mr. Prince has told in the very beginning of the return. So how do we kind of measure the efforts of learning and development? And if so, what are some metrics that you would suggest to our audience to measure?
I think we should ask Dr. Nandkumar because he is evaluated every day on that.
No, I will leave it to the group leading and development head.
All right.
Yes, Doc, go ahead.
No, I think the effectiveness of learning and development is measured in a couple of processes. Earlier, Naushad referred to when he discussed in terms of readiness for the succession management, succession cover. The percentage of succession cover that we are able to build in for the critical roles would be one parameter that one could look at it. The second could be in terms of, in many of our seminal development programs that we do what we call as an action learning projects. So by taking a business challenge and applying the learnings from the program, how we have been able to deliver value to the business could be another area by which one can look at it. How much of the action learning projects have really helped in furthering the growth prospects or starting up a new venture or an initiative could also be a factor that one can look at it. And also the readiness and the speed with which people are able to take up the position and to do the job effectively could be a metrics that we could use it, Prince, would you like to add something more?
Yeah, why don't you tell that at the end of the year you get a percentage of salary based on the feedback that people give. The learning and development initiatives will help me to perform my job better and contribute to the bottom line of the organization. If 80% of the people say that you have not helped, then you won't get anything at all. That's a simple way that we are.
I think we kind of lost.
Perception is important.
No, okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, but your voice is breaking up, but it's okay. Please go ahead.
Yeah,
I think we
so
can
it's
hear
all
you
about
right now.
perception. And if learning and development initiatives don't help to create a positive perception that what I learned does not build my capability, then all these initiatives have no meaning at all.
Oh,
Right?
well,
So we're doing a very simple tool. All those initiatives have no meaning if people feel that those initiatives are not building capability.
good. Well, it's been a fantastic conversation, and thank you so much to Mahindra leadership team. I know we kind of, Elora kind of approached you, Mr. Prince and Namrata Gill, but then thank you for taking that initiative, for bringing your entire team together to share your experts and thoughtful insights with our audience. We really, really appreciate that.
Thank you,
Okay,
Nisha.
thank
Thank
you.
you
And
very much.
Nisha, why don't you connect with Dr. Nand Kumar? Right,
Sure,
it's a
sure.
good thing we can. Yeah, so Nanda, why don't you connect with Nisha?
Sure, sure,
Sure.
sure, sure.
Look forward to. Vanda, look
Yes,
forward to having you back again on in the
right,
HR Live sometime soon.
right.
Okay,
Thank you,
bye.
Thank you,
Nisha.
Nisha.
All
Bye.
right.
Thanks,
Have a
Naushad.
great night.
Thanks, Nanda. Bye.
Bye, bye,
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
bye.
Thank you, Nisha. Bye.
And to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in to HR Live. And we really, really appreciate all your support and the light tweets that you're doing right there. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go ahead and do that. And it's here. And you will be able to stay current to all the updates that are happening at EDHL Live. Thanks. Bye-bye.